What's up guys, Mike Skinner here from First to 20 and welcome to my Lorcana guide video. Today we're going to be jumping into one of the 6 inks and personally one of the ones that I really like, and this is the Amber ink. For those of you who haven't been following Lorcana, there are 6 different inks and you're only allowed to have 2 different inks in your deck, so you have to kind of pick and choose which one is going to be the ones that you really want to do. Personally, I've been playing a lot of playtesting on Pixelborn, so shout out to Pixelborn. Really great program to play Lorcana. If you haven't already downloaded it, I highly recommend it. And this is just speaking from my experience. Obviously, your results may vary. I am not a all master of Lorcana. This game is brand new, so this is just a little review and how I feel like some of these cards are so far from my testing. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. We'll start off with Ariel on human legs. Sorry if I mess up some of the terminology here. I'm used to Magic where I say tap to sing, so if I say tap, I'm just meaning that you are exhausting her, you are expending her, you are turning her sideways to use her ability. So yeah, this character cannot sing songs. She is a 4 cost, and she does give you 2 lore points, which is nice, and 3/4 in stats. I haven't seen this card at all, to be honest, in any of the decks. 4 cost, 3/4. Her stats are okay, but not being able to sing songs does kind of stink. Sometimes you just want to be able to cast your songs for free. So, not being able to sing songs is a bit of a drawback, but overall, this card seems just decent. Could be good for draft. There are cards that are going to be better for limited formats, sealed formats, but as far as constructed, I think this card is pretty much a dud. Next up, we have a card that I actually have seen get some decent amount of play, and this is Ariel, Spectacular Singer. She is a 3 cost as opposed to the 4 cost of her counterpart. She is a 2/3 for 3, so decent stats there, but she does have Singer 5. So this allows her to sing songs that cost 5 or less. This is a really great ability considering that she's a 3 cost, so some of the more expensive songs that you might be trying to cast in your games, she's definitely going to help you be able to cast those early. And not only that, you would think that would be enough, but she does have a come into play effect. So when you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a song card and put it into your hand and put the rest at the bottom. Play Ariel, look at the top 4, grab a song, and then next turn, you could turn her sideways and actually cast a song for free, given that it's 5 cost or less, obviously. So overall, this Ariel is really cool. I do think that she is a decent card for constructed. I have seen her in some different decks. I'd be curious to see, as other songs come out in the future and other sets, if her play does go up more. But as of right now, I think she's a solid card. So speaking of songs, we do have our first song on the list, and this is Be Our Guest. It is a 2 cost song that also can be used as ink, which is great. So look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a character and put them into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is similar to the Ariel effect that we just spoke about. Top 4 cards of your deck. However, this is grabbing a character as opposed to a song. So this is kind of like the reverse of what we were looking at. This is very good. Looking at the top 4 and being able to choose in a situation which character you need is a very good effect. And overall, I think this card is very solid. I have seen lots of decks that play 4 copies of this card, so I don't think it's a requirement for every single deck, but I definitely think it has its uses, and it's a great card. Up next, we have Cinderella, and honestly, Cinderella, I have not seen any play of Cinderella, but let's get into what she does. So she is a 4 cost, gentle and kind. It's very nice of her, and she can be used as ink, so that's important. And she's a 2/5, so not too strong on the attack, but 5 defense is pretty good. She's another singer 5, so her and Ariel love to sing, and you can turn her sideways to remove up to 3 damage from a princess character. So for those of you who have been trying to build princess decks, I think this is an automatic shoe-in. I haven't seen too many princess decks on the ladder, to be honest with you. I am only in gold rank, so I'm not grandmaster rank, so maybe higher up in the ranks there are some sneaky princess decks running around, but as of right now I haven't really seen this card at all. But I know that as other sets come out and the princess roster expands, I can imagine that eventually there will be a pretty good princess list, and I could see this card being a part of it. She also does add 2 lore, which is above average. I would say 2 lore is really good on most cards. 3 and 4 obviously is the best. But 2 lore is solid, and I feel like this card eventually will see some play. Next up, we have Control Your Temper, and this is an action card for 1 cost, and it also can be used as, I keep wanting to say mana, but sorry, I come from a Magic background, but this is ink, sorry, so for 1, it can be charged for ink, And so chosen character gets -2 attack this turn. This card, it could be really good and limited. I could see this being something that you can use, maybe, causing your opponent to have a lower attack and then trading into it. I could see some different kind of value there. But honestly, I just don't see room for it in most deck lists unless you're doing something specific and really trying to attack into stuff. The fact that cards need to be exerted in order to be attacked does make this card a little weaker, because you can't just choose a character and kill it unless it's exerted, so that it really limits the amount of targets you can use on this card. So overall, like I said, I do think in limited this might be an interesting pick, but as far as constructed goes, I just don't see it happening right now. Up next, we got Dinglehopper for 1 cost, and it can be used as ink as well. The effect is called Straighten Hair, excuse me. You can exert it to remove 1 damage from a chosen character. So this is just a cheap item. It sits in play unless your opponent destroys it, which I have not seen a lot of item destruction, so I feel like items are pretty decent right now. They're in a good place. And you could turn it sideways, exert it to go ahead and remove 1 damage from a character. This card's okay. I have seen other effects in the game that remove damage that are much better. Things like Rapunzel that are pretty much, really, really good. So this card is all right. Again, these are cards that I can see being decent and limited. But as far as constructed goes, I don't know how effective it'll be. Removing 1 damage, I just think there's other cards that do it better. So up next we have Goofy Musketeer, and there are a bunch of Musketeer cards, which we'll get into, but this is the first of them. And this is a 5 cost, and he can be used as ink as well. And he does have the bodyguard effect, so when he comes into play, you can choose to automatically exert him even though it's the first turn, and if you do, he's the only card that can be attacked. Well, him or any other bodyguard, so only bodyguards can be attacked, and then afterwards you can go ahead and attack any character that's exerted. So he kind of defends it. He's got a 3 attack and 6 in defense, so 6 in defense is really good. I would say it's just, unfortunately does die to Maui, which Maui eats most cards. So he's still in the Maui range, so he can be eaten by Maui. But other than that, I think he's pretty good stats. And when you play this character, you can remove up to 2 damage from each of your Musketeer characters. So as I mentioned on Dinglehopper, there are just other cards that are just better at healing. I think this is one of them as long as you're playing Musketeers. I haven't really seen a lot of Musketeer decks. I have seen some deck lists for Musketeers. I don't know how good they are, but I haven't seen any in my playtesting as of yet. But Goofy does seem, if you're going to play a Musketeer deck, like he's automatically a shoe-in. And he only provides 1 lore, which is pretty disappointing for a 5 cost. So I really would have liked to see 2 lore on him. I think it would have really made him a lot better. But overall, I think he's still a decent card as long as you're playing in that theme. Up next, we have the King of Olympus, or, self-proclaimed King of Olympus. This is Hades. This is actually the art of the enchanted version, which are like secret rares, if you want to call them that, from other card games. So this is actually an alternate art Hades. You could compare it with this one here, which I think they're both really cool. Let's bring it a little closer so you can see it. Wearing the blonde hair, is sitting in Zeus's throne. Really cool art on this one, and I do think that the alternate art is pretty sweet. So there you go. That is the enchanted version, as they're calling it. It is a 8 cost, so this guy is a bomb. He is a late game card, and as you can see, he has no ink, so he cannot be used as ink. So, a huge strategy in this game is kind of balancing the ink cards with the non-ink cards, because unfortunately you can't use these as ink. So sometimes you'll get stuck with a bunch of cards in your hand that you can't ink, and that could be very frustrating. Your opponent is playing all these different cards and you're stuck. You cannot. It's kind of the equivalent of Magic if you don't have lands in your hand, for those of you who have played Magic. So you definitely don't want to be stuck without inkable cards, but he is a huge card and he has a huge reward if you are able to play him. So you can shift him in for 6, which means that if you have a previous Hades in play, rather than paying the 8 cost, you can kind of evolve, Pokemon evolve on top of the Hades, and then for 6 you could play him. And the cool thing about shift is if the card that's already been in play has been in there for more than a turn, you can immediately attack or immediately turn it for lore or whatever you want to do, because the card technically copies the same status as the card before it. So if it had damage on it, it still has damage on it. If it was turned sideways, it still turns sideways, but it gives you an opportunity to kind of sneak in there and immediately attack or do something crazy, which is really cool. He is a 6/7, so he is out of Maui range, and I think that's an important number there. 7 is a big deal. So very good stats on him there, as I would expect. And then Sinister Plot is his ability. This character gets +1 lore for each villain character you have in play. So obviously, you know, similar to the princess theme, this would be a villain theme. And if you have a bunch of villains in play, he gets a bunch of lore, and he can turn sideways for a large amount of lore. You know, I don't think this card right now is quite as good as it looks, just because I don't feel like villains are as strong as they should be. You know, like I've said a lot of with the other cards, there are going to be more villains released. There are villains in every Disney movie, so they will continue to release villains every set. And I can see at some point you being able to put together enough good, valuable villains to maybe make this card, you know, a bomb that's worth having. But as of right now, I think that there's better Hades in the game, including the blue one, which I really like. And even the one that I'm about to talk about next is pretty good. But overall, I think this card does have a place in a deck, in a theme, but not yet. Up next, we have Hades, Lord of the Underworld, and this is a Hades that I really do like. He is a 4 cost, and he cannot be used as ink, as we spoke about earlier, so that does have a little bit of a drawback. When you play him, he returns a character card from your discard pile to your hand, so he goes ahead and revives something, which is great. You get it back to your hand. There aren't a lot of effects like that in this game currently, and this game is a lot about attrition. You're just kind of like, who's got more cards in their hand, who's got more cards in play. It's very much about that. So being able to revive something to your hand not only puts a card back in your hand, but it also puts another resource that you can play. So besides the obvious grabbing back a card that you want to play again, you could actually even grab back a card that you could use for ink. Maybe your hand is full of cards that don't have ink, and you're able to play Hades, grab a card that does let you ink, put it into the ink. You know, there's different ways to play this card, and I think it's very valuable for that. And 3/2, you know, not the best stats, but decent enough. Taps for 1 lore, which I think is good. So this card I think will be in a lot of different decks. I don't know if it's necessarily a 4 of in every deck, maybe a 2 of, depending on what the deck is, but I definitely think that this card is worth playing in your decks. Up next, we have Hakuna Matata, a personal favorite of mine from one of my favorite Disney movies, The Lion King. And this is a 4 cost that can be used as ink, which is nice. And when you cast it, either by turning a 4 drop or more sideways, or by casting it with your ink, you could remove up to 3 damage from each of your characters. So we talked about Dinglehopper earlier, you know, removing 1. This removes 3 from every character. So this card seems amazing when you first look at it. I mean, healing 3 from every character, like, really seems good. However, I haven't found a lot of opportunities where a mass heal would be effective. Personally, usually the trades end up happening pretty quickly in my experience. You know, usually on one turn something will attack or it'll provide lore, and then the very next turn you're pretty much setting 2 units into it to kill it. So there haven't been a huge amount of situations where like the whole board is injured, unless you're playing against maybe Tinkerbell or something like that, where she does deal 1 damage to everything. But it's such a specific scenario that I don't know if this card is that good right now. Although it does seem, like I said, strong on paper, giving, you know, 3 health to everything. I just don't find enough situations right now where the whole board is injured. But maybe in the future this card could be decent. And like I said, I don't think it's a bad card. And the good thing is, if you don't need it, you can make it ink. But overall, I just don't see this card in many lists at the moment. Up next, we have another healing card. So if you're seeing a theme here with Amber, they do like to heal. So this is a 1 cost that can be used as ink as well, Healing Glow, and remove up to 2 damage from a chosen character. So earlier we had Dinglehopper. It was a 1 cost, and you would turn it sideways to take 1 damage off. Now you have 1 that you would cast. This is not a permanent, so you cast it once, and it goes into your discard pile, and it removes 2 damage from a chosen character. Again, I think these are limited cards. I can see in limited when maybe, you know, you don't have the most optimal trades or cards in play, and you're having to put damage on different things. Then I could see, you know, being able to heal something for 2, catch your opponent off guard, and then attack into something. I could see that being decent. But in constructed, I just don't think these healing cards are that good. The main big healing card I've seen that we'll get into is Rapunzel, and I think she's just the most effective of these, just because she draws you cards. But this one, just okay for me. Up next, we have Hey Hey Boat Snack. So he is a 1-drop, and he can be used as ink as well. He has these support effects, so whenever you quest with this card, you can add their power to another character, so that's really cool. Unfortunately, he only has 1 power, so you're not adding much, but it is still a nice effect to have. And he does have 2 defense, which is pretty common for 1-drops in this game. 1-2 is a pretty common stat line. As I mentioned, he has support, and he does tap for 1 lore. However, I just don't think Hey Hey is strong enough right now. I just think there's better 1-drops right now. Up next is an interesting card, in my opinion. So this is Just in Time. So this is a 3-drop that cannot be used as ink, so that is important to note. And that you may play a character card with a cost of 5 or less for free. So this card will go ahead and cheat in a 5-drop, which ideally you're playing a 5-drop, not a lower cost. But you would cheat in a 5-drop for free on turn 3. So this seems really good, considering that there are some pretty strong 5-drops in the game. However, from my experience, this card has just been kind of okay. There are just other decks that are doing it better. For example, blue is like constantly ramping, and in my experience, I was playing a just-in-time deck just to try it out. And I'd play 2 cards to go ahead and play out my guy, my big guy, and then your opponent just plays like Dragonfire or something on it, and like you just gave up 2 cards just to get it toasted. So like the card is not bad, and in a great scenario where they can't deal with that 5-drop, I can see it being strong. But right now, I just feel like decks like blue, which are ramping, I played this 5-drop, but they're already on 7 ink, so it really doesn't make a huge difference. I like this card. I really want to like this card, and I would love to see a cool list with this card. But I found that it does work once. It's really cute. But then you draw them late game, and you already have 7 or 8 ink. You don't need it anymore, and now you can't ink it. It doesn't do anything. So this card, I think, is just all right. Up next, we have Lantern, which is a reference to one of my new age favorite Disney movies. And for those of you who don't know, I'm completely tattooed in Disney. I'm a huge Disney fan, so all these card arts are really, really awesome. Anyway, so this is a 2-cost that cannot be used as ink. And it is an item, so it will stay in play when you play it, and you can go ahead and exert it. It's called Birthday Lights, and you can pay 1 less cost for the next character you play this turn. I have seen some decks use this, and it's cute. You can go ahead and turn it sideways and be able to play something early, or even play something for free. If it's a 1-drop and you don't have any ink left, you can turn it sideways, play it for free. So it does have some cute scenarios where I can see it being decent. However, I have yet to see it in a deck that's really like meta defining. I think this card does have people play testing with it just to see how strong it could be, but right now I don't think there's any specific cards that are making it super powerful. So I think you should keep an eye on this one, but honestly not that strong at the moment. Up next, we have LeFou, and this is Bumbler LeFou. There are a couple different versions of LeFou. This is the amber version of LeFou. He is a 2-drop, and he does have the ink symbol here. And he is loyal, so if you have a character named Gaston in play, you may pay 1 less to play him. So if you have Gaston Reckless, which is another really good early drop Gaston that some decks are playing, you can actually play him for 1, which is really nice. So playing a 1-cost card with the stat line that gives you 2 lore is amazing. So this card is actually really good, although it may not seem that crazy up front. There's a lot of aggro decks, especially one that I've been playing that I've been really liking with Emerald involved, and being able to pay a 2-cost that turns in 2 lore when it quests is very strong. Flynn Rider is another menace that also provides 2 lore for 2 costs, and we're going to get into a card next that actually provides 2 lore for 1 cost. So they're out there, but LeFou I think is just a solid card, a solid stat line. You can use him for ink late game if you draw him, and he provides 2 lore. So I think is overall just a solid card. So up next we have Lilo, and don't be fooled by her demeanor here, looking all cute. She is definitely a force to be reckoned with. So this is Making a Wish. She cannot be used as ink, which I think is sufficient, and she is a 1-cost, so you could play her on the first turn, and she does provide 2 lore. So just a 1/1, very small, doesn't do anything, but she definitely can be strong in combination with bodyguards that can kind of block for her while she just sits there and farms lore. So she is an early drop that can definitely get the game going. I think she's an automatic shoot-in for 4 of copies in every aggro deck that you're playing this color. So speaking of some bodyguards, and this is actually one of the cards that I was combining with Just in Time to kind of put a 5-drop in play pretty early, and I think it's a strong option. This is Maximus, Palace Horse. He is a 5-drop that can be used as ink as well. He does have the bodyguard keyword, so you can go ahead and play him in play exerted, and he will go ahead and absorb attacks for people, which is nice. And then he even has another ability, which is support. So, you know, again, when you quest with him, which unfortunately he only quests for 1, but when you quest with him, he will go ahead and add his power, which is a whopping 4, which is definitely, you know, a big deal. And he'll add it to somebody else. So, you know, you can turn Lilo, the 1/1, into a 5/1 and, you know, run into something. So, you know, it's definitely good. And the good thing is that once it's sideways, it blocks. So it has multiple uses. And I do think this card is really good. It is really good stats, 4/5. Again, it dies to Maui, just like most things. But I think that it is really, really good at keeping your, you know, lore questers alive, and also being able to let them trade some bigger dudes later in the game. So really, really nice. All right, here is another Maximus, 3-drop Maximus, which I don't think is as good. This is Relentless Pursuer. So it's a 3/3, which is great stat line for a 3-drop in my opinion, but this is Horse Kick. So this is like kind of like 2 guards combined. We had a card earlier that did something like this, so Control Your Temper also gave -2. So this is kind of like a creature version of that, so you actually play it and it does that effect, which is nice. I could see this version being okay, and you know, if like I said, if we have a deck that we're trading a lot, or that we really want to attack into their board, I can see this card being decent. Definitely probably good in limited. I can see this card probably being a boss in limited, because 3/3 stat line is pretty strong. But as far as constructed is concerned, I haven't seen it too much. Up next, we have the one and only Mickey Mouse. So there's actually a different Mickey in every color. So this is the Amber Mickey. He is a 3-cost that can be used as ink, which is really nice. And he is a true friend. He gives you 2 lore, which is great. And honestly, I've been using him a lot in my aggro decks just to use him for his stat line. So I know I could be using Maximus here, which is the same stat line and the same cost. But unfortunately, Maximus only provides me 1 lore. Mickey does provide 2 lore, which is great for you know, aggressive decks trying to get to 20 as fast as possible. And although it is a vanilla card, so it's not any kind of game-breaking card, I think it's just a solid, decent card that on paper probably looks pretty blank, but actually provides some decent use in game. Next up, we have his Boothang Minnie Mouse, which is the beloved princess. This is a 2-cost mini that has the ability to be ink as well. And she is a 2/3, so decent stats for a 2-drop. So normal 2/2s attack into her, they got to attack twice. So that's really nice to have. That 3 does make a difference. And the big thing about this Minnie Mouse, although she seems like she doesn't do anything, is that she is a princess. So if you're playing a princess deck, she's definitely an early drop princess that you can play in that list. And there are cards that we will get into later, such as Moana, which when you quest with her, she unexerts all your princesses. So this Minnie Mouse would be included in that. So later on, when there are princess decks and there are more cards to provide buffs to these princesses, I think Minnie Mouse is obviously an include in that, because she is a princess and her stats are decent. So speaking of Moana, here she is, of Montunui. I'm sorry, I should know this. I'm a Disney guy, but I don't know Montunui. So that's where she's from. Okay, got it. So Montunui, whatever. I'm giving up. So she is a 5-drop, and she does provide ink as well, which is nice. And she has a 1/6 stat line. So although she doesn't provide very much attack, she definitely has a nice defense. Although she does die to Maui. Maui is just an animal. The good thing about this card is she has an ability called We Can Fix It. So whenever this character quests, you may ready your other princess characters, and then they cannot quest for the rest of the turn. So really, really strong effect, as we mentioned earlier, with Minnie Mouse and other princesses that are in the game that are really strong. Moana can go ahead and quest for 3, might I add, because that is very good. And then she will go ahead and unexert all the princesses that may be already quested. Unfortunately, they cannot quest again, because that would be ridiculous, but you can use them to attack, or you can just protect them from being able to be attacked into by unexerting them, which is a pretty strong effect for that deck. However, as I mentioned earlier, personally, I just have not seen a princess list that has enough gas, enough to it yet. Not saying that one doesn't exist, because the game is still very fresh. There might be a secret princess list that ends up being really good, but as of right now, I just feel like it still needs a little more support. And I think by set 2, there should be enough for this set to be for this card to be really, really good. Up next, we have Mr. Smee. So Loyal First Mate, he is a 3 cost, and he does provide ink as well. So Smee, it doesn't look very threatening at first. He has no ability here. He is a pirate, so I don't know if in the future we'll have some more pirate-themed stuff going on. But that is a keyword that he does have there that's not on every card, so that's nice to see. And he is a 2/5, so he does provide a decent attack stat for 3, and then he has a big butt. So he is a 5 statted, and he provides 1 lore. Again, I think this is a limited card. I think he's a decent curve for his stat line, but just doesn't provide anything at the moment to constructed decks that can't be done by a better card. So overall, this to me is just okay. Doesn't do anything except provide his stats, which, like I said, I think will be decent and limited, but just not for constructed. Up next, we have my personal favorite Disney song out of all Disney movies. There's a lot of great ones out there, don't get me wrong, but this is the one that's my favorite. And let's see if it translates that way into a card. So it is a 3 cost that cannot be used as ink. Obviously, it can be sung by anybody who has a cost of 3 or more. And it returns a character card from your discard to your hand. So similar to the Hades effect that we saw earlier, this is a song version of that, and it actually has a 1 less cost. So if you're able to, use this earlier in a turn to get something back, or maybe even sing this song and allow one of your characters to cast it for free and get a card back to your hand. I think this is decent. You could also grab it with Ariel, which is nice because it is a song, so you can go ahead and grab it with Ariel and put it into your hand. So I think this might have some uses in some decks. I have yet to see it do anything super crazy, but overall, I think this is definitely going to be good and limited, and probably decent and constructed depending on the deck it finds a home in. Up next, I have a card that I wish I saw more because I really like this art. This Prince Philip art I think is one of the best in the game, in my opinion. So this is Prince Philip the Dragon Slayer. And this is a 4 cost that cannot be used as ink, unfortunately. He's got a 3/3 stat line, which is a little below average, but not terrible. And then his ability is Heroism. So when this character challenges and is banished, you may banish the challenged character. So essentially, Philip wants to run into things that are bigger than him, so you can trade him into a bigger card. Unfortunately, like I mentioned a couple times, the fact that the card needs to be exerted to be attacked into does sometimes limit the way that these attack abilities work. They become a little more situational. So the card has to be bigger than him, and it has to be exerted. So there's a couple conditions to be met there. So that's why I don't think I've seen a lot of him in any decks. But he does provide 2 lore, which is decent. And I would love to see him in more lists, but right now I have not really seen him in any decks. But maybe we will in the future, who knows. Alrighty, next up we have Pumbaa, the Friendly Warthog. This is a 4 cost, and he does provide ink as well, which is nice. No ability for Pumbaa, he is just a 3/5, so he is a little bigger than average on the attack here, but overall does not provide much and provides 1 lore. Again, I think a lot of these vanilla cards are just, stat sticks for limited. So when you're drafting and you need something on curve, maybe you'll play Pumbaa, but overall it does not have any other real uses in constructed. Up next, we have my personal favorite princess. She's probably tied up there with Belle, but I really, really like Rapunzel. This is gifted with healing, and this card is very strong. It is a legendary, so it's got to be good. And it definitely is. So it's a 4 cost, and it can provide ink. And when you play this character, you can remove up to 3 damage from one of your characters, and then draw a card from each damage removed this way. So as I've been mentioning in this whole video, saying that there are just better cards to heal, this is the best one for sure. Drawing cards is no joke in this game, especially when you're playing Amber. Unless you're playing Stitch, there's not really a lot of ways to draw cards in Amber, so this is really, really nice. Rapunzel can be used to heal up some of the bodyguards, maybe Maximus, he blocks something for you. He blocks 3 damage, and then you play her, and you heal him for 3, and you draw 3 cards. That seems like really, really good. I have noticed that it doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes your character only has 1 or 2 damage on it, but still being able to replace herself when you play her, just even if it's healing for 1, is really nice. And she has great stats, 1 attack unfortunately, but 5 defense, so she is a little bit tough to get rid of, and she does provide 2 lore. So comes in, draws you at least a card for herself, probably, maybe even 2, maybe even 3, and then goes ahead and provides 2 lore with a decent amount of stats. This card is definitely worth playing, and it is a very, very good card. Up next is my boy Sebastian. This is the court composer. He is a 2 cost that does provide ink, and he sings for 4. So this guy, he's got those vocal cords, and he is singing songs. So Doesn't have any other effects, but you want to just play him early in these song decks, and he will allow you to play a lot of songs that you might not be able to play with ink yet, and you could actually use Sebastian to play them, which is really nice. So I think this card is decent. If you're playing a song deck, he is a must-have, but I haven't really seen any crazy song decks yet, so it remains to be seen just how strong it'll be. Now this card I really like. So this is Simba, Protective Cub. He is a 2-drop that can be used as ink. Now this card does have Bodyguard like some of the other cards. However, the fact that he costs 2 is really strong. So I've been playing a lot of aggro lately, and usually the aggro starts off with turn 1 Lilo, which exerts for 2, and then you play Simba. And most characters can't kill Simba right away. Most characters on turn 2 are 2/2s or 2/3s or maybe even 1/2s, so they really have a hard time with dealing with Simba early game, and that's really great because that means they can't attack into your Lilo or to your smaller characters that are just sitting there pumping out lore, and Simba's just sitting there with his butt in the way. And even late game, sometimes you could play Simba, maybe heal him with Rapunzel. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on with Simba here, and I think that he's an excellent card, for the amount that he costs. Even though Bodyguard is on a lot of different cards, as I mentioned, I think the fact that he is a 2-drop and the way he curves out with some of the more aggressive decks is really good. He does provide 1 lore, which is nice. 2 lore I think would be over the top, crazy, but he is overall a really solid defender. Up next, we have one of the many Stitches that appear in this set. It is Stitch, Carefree Surfer. It is a 7-drop Stitch that can be used as energy. Although I really do like this art, you might prefer the enchanted version, which is this version here, which is really colorful and awesome. Actually, this is like probably my favorite enchanted card. Next to Elsa, I think Elsa's pretty sweet too, and Aurora. There's a lot of cool enchanted cards, but this one is really colorful and vibrant, which I love. And he does have the ability Ohana, which means family, for those of you who don't watch the movie, come on. But in this game, it means when you play this character, if you have 2 or more characters in play, you may draw 2 cards. So again, if he's got his family with him, he's going to draw 2 cards. And he does have a 4-8 stat line, which is a really awesome stat line. 8 defense is a pain in the rear to get rid of. So definitely a great stat line for him. Unfortunately, I think he gets overshadowed by a different Stitch in this game right now, which I will get into after this one. And he is, I think, a decent card. He draws you 2. He taps for 2 lore. I think this card definitely has potential in more aggressive decks that have the board wide. But I just haven't seen him be played. I don't think this card is terrible by any means, but I just think, like I said, he's overshadowed by a different Stitch, and it remains to be seen if this one will eventually make its way into some deck lists. Up next, we have Stitch New Dog. So this is a 1-drop, and it does provide ink, so that's great. You draw it late game, you're not stuck with a 1-drop, you could at least use it for lore. And it is a 2/2, which is solid. There's a lot of 1/1s in the game, a lot of 1/2s in the game, so he's able to trade into those, which is really nice without being able to die on the first turn. And the best part about this Stitch is he can be shifted into. So we're going over to the next Stitch. There's a little 2-parter here. So this is the main Stitch that I've been seeing get a lot of attention, and I think it's the main reason why the 7-drop Stitch just isn't seeing a lot of attention right now. Not that it shouldn't. I think that that might change over time, but right now this is the rock star, as the name implies. It is a 6-drop that is also able to be inked, and it shifts for 4. So for 4 ink, you're able to go ahead and cheat this guy out on top of your 1-drop Stitch, and he has 3 lore, which is significantly better than 2 lore. Even though it only seems like 1 extra, it is a huge difference. And the good thing about him is whenever you play a card with a cost of 2 or less, you may exert it to draw a card. So in decks like aggressive decks where you're playing Simba, you play Simba, exert him, so now he has Bodyguard, and you draw a card for it. So drawing cards is huge in these kind of games, so that's why he's definitely on the top of the list, and he's definitely able to generate a lot of cards. However, there's games where he kind of doesn't. You play all your cards out kind of early, and then you play Stitch, and then you really don't play any other cards that are low. So it depends on what kind of deck you're playing him in, but overall, I've definitely seen the majority of people playing this version of Stitch, and I can see why. He's definitely strong, and I think it's going to be interesting to see, if people end up going to the other Stitch at some point. But right now, I think this is the better of the 2, and with good reason, people are playing it. Alrighty, up next we have Timon the Grub Rustler, and he is a 1-drop that also can be inked. and he is a 1-2 stat line, so he's about average. And his ability is Taste Like Chicken. So when you play this character, you may remove up to 1 damage from a chosen character. Again, we've been talking about this the whole review, you know, healing cards. This card I think is really decent and limited. It provides a character that can attack and quest. It also heals for 1. So this could be decent, but in constructed, doesn't really have a home right now. Ursula's Shell Necklace. This is an item that costs 3, cannot be used as ink. And Now Sing is the ability, and whenever you play a song, you may pay 1 to draw a card. So again, for these song decks, this allows you to maybe, you know, use Sebastian, play a song for free, then only pay 1, draw a card. So this definitely could get interesting if you're playing a song deck. However, as I mentioned earlier, I just haven't seen a super strong song deck. I'm not saying there isn't a list out there, don't come after me, but as of right now, from my experience, I have not seen any crazy song decks. But if you do have a song deck, I can see this definitely being valuable, as you're able to draw cards, and like I said, that is huge in every card game. And last on our review for today will be You Have Forgotten Me. And I definitely have it, Mufasa. I'll never forget you. So this is a 4-drop that provides ink as well. Each opponent chooses and discards 2 cards. So this is not a song. This is just an action. So you need to pay full cost for this one. But being able to discard 2 cards from your opponent's hand does seem really, really strong. And it is. So I do like this card. I guess my only kind of hesitation on this card is a lot of the games that I've played, you know, you get pretty low on cards pretty quick, unless you're playing some control deck where you're constantly pumping cards, or maybe you just played a whole new world and you just refilled your hand. This card is a lot of times dead. You know, you can go ahead and use it as ink if you need to, but I found that in a lot of situations where I have this card in my hand, my opponent only has 1 card left, or maybe even 0 cards left because they're abusing Beast Mirror. And if you don't know what card that is, definitely check out my other color reviews, which I will be bringing out ASAP. But yeah, those cards interacting with this card does make this card a little worse, but I think that, you know, in limited, it's probably really strong, being able to discard 2 cards out of your opponent's hand when they're already playing with cards that are pretty limited. So that could be strong. And I don't think that this card is necessarily bad. I can see it in some lists, but you know, definitely not a 4 of. All right, guys, and that wraps up my Amber review for Lorcana. I'm super, super excited for this game, and I'm sure tons of you are as well. If you're watching this video, I'm sure you are. You know, being that I grew up in Florida, I'm a huge Disney guy. I love going to Disney, and it's been a huge part of who I am and growing up and everything like that. So I have played a bunch of card games, but this is the one that I'm the most excited for in a very long time. So I hope you guys are too, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. This is a brand new channel, so if you could help me out and give me a sub, I'd really appreciate that. And I plan on bringing you guys lots of awesome Lorcana content. By the time you're seeing this, I may or may not have already recorded and uploaded the other color reviews, so definitely keep an eye out for those. I do plan on vlogging on the 18th, going to the store and seeing what I can get my hands on. Hopefully my local card store is not super scalping on prices, but we will see. But in the meantime, be kind out there, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.